Students taking it to the streets downtown today, marching from Dundas Square to Queen's Park to protest the Ford government's changes to OSAP funding. It will result in many lower-income students receiving less in grants than before, despite an across-the-board cut in tuition.
What better way is there to welcome back the government than with a party with students across Ontario right on their front lawn? Are we excited? Today we are here to send a clear message to this government that 1 month later we are still just as serious as ever, and that we are no fools to the reality that this is an attack on students' rights, that this is an attack on OSAP, and this is an attack on our democracy.
The legislature resumed today much in the same way it recessed amidst protests. There were protesters out on the front of the Queen's Park lawn, and some even made it inside the legislature.
Here's an example of indoctrination, what we just saw up there. This is part of the opposition benches. That's how they train our kids, with a filthy mouth. They should have their mouths washed out with soap. That's what they should have, because that's embarrassing.
The student protesters were promptly ejected from the legislature, adding to what has been a busy first day back, filled with ghosts that the government may not want to remember, like the highly contentious autism file and allegations that the minister bullied groups into supporting the government's plan. Was there pressure put on autism groups to support the government's announcement?
As I mentioned, there was a tense meeting between me and one of the stakeholder groups, but we've had many endorsements of our plan, including Erin Oak, CHEO, Holland Bloorview, where we made the announcement. I very much apologized if the tone that I took in the meeting was interpreted in any way, shape, or form to be threatening. Certainly, that's not how I would have liked to have collaborated. So that's why I said I'm sorry. I really am truly sorry.
Earlier this month, the government announced sweeping changes to the way autism funding is delivered, with the goal of removing 23,000 families off of a wait list for treatment within the next year and a half. But with that comes big changes. Instead of every child receiving needs-based funding, families will now be capped at approximately $140,000 over the life of a child. But we're learning today that a family's income will have an impact on how much funding each child will receive. The cost for many families is between $50,000 and $80,000 a year, far more than any family will receive. Families like the Galls, whose 6-year-old son Ryan has been benefiting from intensive therapy.
He's currently receiving 20 hours a week of ABA at home. It's funded by the government. We waited 2.5 years, and we're finally seeing him make gains, gaining life skills. He can communicate with his iPad now, and all this is going to end in a couple of months.
Under the government's formula, families earning more than $250,000 a year would not be eligible for funding, while those making less than $55,000 would get full support. However, the government wouldn't say how funding would be impacted for families in between. Still, the NDP is not backing away from its calls for McLeod's resignation.
Ms. McLeod has a couple strikes against her, I'd say. One is the fact that she did try to bully those stakeholders into supporting the government legislation. The other is the horrible legislation that they're bringing forward, or changes, I guess, to the autism program. I mean, it is going to leave children without the supports that they need to be able to progress. And in fact, lots of children are going to regress.
And that's Kristen's biggest fear.
All of a sudden, the therapists are going to be gone, and he's going to have to go to school full time, and he's not ready for that. He doesn't have the skills for it. He won't have the support in the school system, and it'll be devastating for our family.
Meanwhile, the Liberals have launched a formal request to the Integrity Commissioner, asking them to look into Lisa McLeod's alleged comments to the Ontario Association for Behaviour Analysts.